Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Suburban Rifleman. I want to apologize right away for the audio. I'm coming home from work. I didn't have time to go home and pick up my sound recorder, so I'm just using my phone. And the iPhone doesn't play well with guns. The audio recorder cuts out at loud noises, and it takes a long time to recover. So if you miss some of my words or whatever, I apologize for that in advance. This is not going to be a long video. Some of you may have seen the video I posted a couple of days ago featuring my cousin's number 4 Mark 1, Lee Enfield. As you can probably note if you are familiar with Lee Enfields, this is a dreadfully sporterized number 1 Mark 3. And this is one of those freebie guns that comes out of the woodwork. If you're a gun person for long enough and you're surrounded by people who are not gun people, sooner or later, Uncle Jack dies. He leaves behind his hunting rifle. Nobody's interested in it. Nobody's into guns. They don't want a scary gun in their house, so they just offer it to you. So first of all, let me just say I have nothing invested in this rifle. It's not the worst sporterization job I've ever seen, but if you're in the Milsurp community long enough, you're going to get to know Bubba. You're going to get to know Bubba's handiwork, and you're going to get to hate it and wonder, why did they do this to these guns? And I could talk about that for an hour. Nobody wants to hear about that. In the case of this rifle, obviously there's been heavy modifications to the stock. And unfortunately, in addition to chopping up the wood, if it was just the wood, I could set this rifle straight very easily. But this is a little more difficult, and I'm not planning on restoring this to military configuration. But the reason I'm filming this is I have a question that I want to pose to all of you. In addition to chopping up the wood, Bubba decided he wanted a scope on this rifle. And back in the day, if you wanted to put a scope on a Lee Enfield rifle, you used a Weaver side mount, which required the drilling of 4 holes, which are there. They were poorly drilled and poorly tapped. I actually have one of those old Weaver side scope mounts, and the holes don't even line up. But in addition, if you want that scope mount to fit flush, the clip bridge is in the way. So what did Bubba do? He got out his angle grinder and ground away a very large portion of the clip bridge. So you can buy clip bridges, and they have been fit to rifles to try to restore them. It's a bit of a project. I think during manufacturing, the clip bridge was actually forged onto the receiver. Then 4 holes were drilled, and that whole assembly was hot riveted to the receiver. It's not just a matter of taking out some screws and throwing away the old clip bridge and screwing on a new one. And honestly, with the amount of damage to this receiver, I don't think this is a good candidate for a proper restoration. Having said that, this rifle's been rattling around, first at my dad's, then at my house, for at least 20 years. I know that the last time this was fired was 18 years ago. And I'm not going to go off on a tangent explaining that, but just know that this rifle has basically been languishing. And partly it's because it makes me sad to even look at it. I didn't do any of this to this rifle other than this pear wood butt plate. There was an old rubber recoil pad that was completely crumbling and falling apart. And so I couldn't put a butt plate on it, a military style butt plate, because somebody took a chop saw and cut this off, at a 90-degree angle. So I just made this pear wood plate and screwed it on. But having shot my cousin's really nice Lee Enfield a few days ago, and I've owned many, but I don't own any military configuration. As a matter of fact, the only 2 Lee Enfields I have are this and my also Sporterized number 4 Mark 1, which is a much nicer job, but it's still Sporterized. But I've owned a lot of military configuration Lee Enfields. I don't have a burning desire to spend the kind of money that they cost nowadays. I've seen them selling upwards of $1,000. I've seen some really minty examples selling upwards of $2,000. And I've had that experience. I've done that. I wouldn't turn down a really nice military configuration Lee Enfield, but I've got other things I want to do. I am, however, and I have been for like 2 years, considering, I can't really do much about the receiver. Oh, and by the way, everything's matching on this rifle. The bolt, the receiver, the barrel, the rear sight, and presumably the trigger guard are all matching to this rifle. This is a #1 Mark III Star, by the way, made by BSA in 1916. So this rifle's not really a candidate for a full-blown restoration, and I don't really feel like spending an enormous amount of money sourcing all the correct parts. My question that I pose to you this evening, and I'm out here to shoot this, and we are running out of light, so I can't talk much longer, but should I restore not the rifle to its original configuration, but should I restore some of the rifle's dignity? I'm talking about buying a surplus stock set, some metal parts, a nose cap, some other furniture, probably off of a drill rifle. That stuff is still relatively affordable. Maybe even some Indian Ishapur parts. And just put this back in as close to military configuration as I can without spending a whole lot of money. And it's still going to cost several $100s to do that. And I'm still not going to have a correct rifle when I'm done. But I think it'll be more enjoyable to shoot. Also, Lee Enfield barrels are quite skinny. And they had a very specific bedding system that was sort of requiring the entire stock to be intact, and a little spring-loaded doohickey that would push up and apply pressure on the bottom of the barrel at a very specific point. All of that stuff is missing out of this rifle, and that should have an adverse effect on accuracy. I don't remember when I shot this like 18 years ago. I remember it being good enough that my nephew could take it out for opening day of deer season. I remember we decided this is accurate enough, but I don't remember what kind of accuracy we were getting. So I just want to put that out to you. And of course, what I decide to do isn't dependent on what you say, but I keep hemming and hawing. Do I just leave it the way it is and enjoy it as it is? Or do I make sort of a rat rod out of it? Do I just cobble it back together to something close to military configuration, which would be much more enjoyable to bring out to the range? Frankly, I'm here in the evening. I'm glad nobody else is here because this rifle's kind of embarrassing, which is, of course, why I'm filming it and showing it to an unlimited number of viewers. But so anyway, we're running out of light. Let's take a few shots through this thing. We'll use some of this old Winchester Super Speed. The magazine is a repro. When whoever gave this to my dad gave it to him, it came with no magazine, and my dad bought a mag online, and I think this is a reproduction, probably made in Pakistan. But the Pakistanis know how to scratch build Lee Enfield parts, and I recall this magazine functions correctly. So anyway, let's take a couple of shots and just see if this is going to be worth putting some money into. If this is throwing bullets all over the place, it might not be worth it at all. But that magazine works. I'm just going to fire a 3-round group here. And I have my target set up at 100 yards, so got a little more kick than the number 4 Mark II did. Of course, it's got a lot less wood and metal on it, which I guess was the idea, make a lighter hunting rifle. All right, I'm going to take a look and see what that 3-round group looks like. Okay, so as you can see, quite a bit low left. And I don't know if you'll be able to see the scale on my Leatherman. You can just take my word for it if you can't. That's about a 3.5 inch group, 3 to 3.5. So 3 to 3.5 minutes of angle is not great. It is quite a bit low left. I have noticed the front sight is pretty far out to the right, so that probably could be brought back over some. It's not great, but again, this barrel is not bedded the way it was designed to. We've got our barrel band here pulling the barrel down into the forestock without the rest of the stock supporting the barrel and without the little doohickey pushing up on it. So I was going to say if it shot a 5-inch group at 100 yards, I would just say, nah, it's not worth it. 3 inches? I mean, and this was very quick offhand in fading light. I think this rifle might be worth trying to make shoot better. So I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. Let me know what you think if you have an opinion. Again, I'm going to do what I want to do at the end of the day, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. And when I post my next video, hopefully it'll be better than this one, and I hope I see all of you here then. Later, guys.